Hello and welcome to the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast. I'm Catherine Tomlinson and I founded Oxford Clay, an eco-conscious pottery company. So on this podcast, we're going to be talking about all things pottery related, often with an eco-conscious twist, and I can't wait to share it with you. Let's go. Hello and welcome back to the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast, and in today's episode I'm real excited to talk to you about 5 beautiful glazes that I've made from plants, and I'm just going to sort of talk you through like each plant, how I made the glaze and what it looks like when it's fired, and yeah, I'm really excited to share this with you. This is like a kind of a new area that I've really got into of like plant ash glazing, and it's so much fun. So if you think like, what's happening? I don't understand what plant ash glazing is. I have done a whole other episode on plant ash glazing, and but just to summarize, effectively, it is making a pottery glaze from the ash that's left over after you've burned plants. So there's kind of minerals and trace metals in every plant, which is taken up by the plant as it grows. And when you burn these, they remain. And you can actually use the ash as an ingredient in a pottery glaze, which is so cool, because each plant makes a completely unique glaze because it has a completely unique chemical structure, basically, when it's turned into an ash. So if you're thinking, oh, this sounds good and like interesting, and you want to kind of learn more about like how ash glazing like works, and also some 60 examples of plant ash glazes, they're all in this new book called Pottery Glazing with Plant Ash. 60 plant-based glazes from one simple recipe, and that's available on the Oxford Clay website, and also on Amazon as well, which you can buy a copy there as well, a paper copy. Okay, so the thing I changed every time was the plant ash, and you'll see in a minute just how incredibly different you can make plant ash glazes just by literally switching the plant that you're using in the ash. And when you're dealing with powders in glaze making, you always want to make sure that you've got an FFP3 face mask as well. So you need to wear one of those whenever you're working with any fine powders in glaze making, or you're working with any plant ash. You don't want to be breathing in those powders. So it's really important to say that first in terms of like safety. Okay, so let's go on to our first one. Okay, this one, let me show you this one. Okay, this is probably one of my top favorites, and this glaze was made with cherry laurel leaves. So the cherry laurel plant is often a plant that you see in kind of sort of like churchyards. It's quite often used as a hedging plant in the UK. And I actually found a cherry laurel tree bush in the local park, and I collected all the leaves. The leaves had like fallen onto the ground, and so this glaze was made from cherry laurel leaves that had just fallen onto the ground. And so I collected them up, I dried them for a little bit more just so they were properly dry to burn. I collected them in the summer and I dried them for another few weeks, and then I burned them and burned them into an ash. And the glaze that the cherry laurel leaves have made is absolutely beautiful. It's so it's like it's a very shiny glaze. It's actually pink. It's a kind of pinky purple glaze, and it's got like lots of brown speckles, which have kind of really mixed into the glaze. So the glaze is obviously like quite high in flux, and these like little bits of colour, like probably iron oxide, probably magnesium that's made the pink colour. And so they've all mixed together to make this really beautiful kind of purpley pink glaze with brown speckles. So yeah, that's one of the most beautiful glazes that I actually made from all the plants I tested. So another really beautiful glaze is actually this glaze, which I made out of black bean pods that I dried. So basically, I grew some black beans and on my allotment, and then I sort of brought them in the autumn, and they were all the pods, had all the pods, shelled all the beans, and obviously stored the dried beans and like ate them. And then the dried pods I dried further over the winter, and then in the spring I burned them and made an ash. And the glaze that they've made is absolutely beautiful. It's like extremely shiny, and then there's so many brown speckles. So again, this must be, it's quite high in flux. So the speckles have really mixed into the glaze. Flux is when it kind of like makes the glaze run. And you can see all the like beautiful brown speckles just kind of really mixing into this kind of transparent, ever so slightly white glaze. And yeah, where it's thicker on the pot, it's gone a kind of beautiful kind of whitey blue colour. So black bean pods make a beautiful glaze. Okay, so the next glaze, I really love this glaze actually, let me just get this one here. Okay, so the next one is this beautiful, it's like a kind of translucent kind of white, where it's thick on the pot, it's white, and then the rest of it is kind of like transparent. And it's like almost like a kind of, I don't know, like, yeah, a beautiful kind of, almost like a transparent kind of ethereal type, iridescent kind of glaze. And this is actually made from the plant Fatsia japonica, it's got like very big waxy leaves. So I was just kind of like pruning the plant. I've got some in some hedging, and I was pruning it, and I dried the leaves, and they went very crispy, sort of crispy hard, and then I burned it. But just a note of caution on burning Fatsia japonica leaves. I think they must contain quite a lot of oil because the flames were absolutely massive. So just be really careful burning that plant, because it's it burned really very strongly, and it was a little, I was glad I had it all outside basically. Just kind of be super careful with that one. But the glaze it made, it's almost like a rutile glaze. If you've ever seen a rutile glaze, you get these kind of like blue speckles in a rutile glaze, and it's got very similar kind of finish to it. It's kind of like lots of bluey white speckles, and very shiny and like, lovely. Okay, so the next glaze I want to show you is a glaze made with holly leaves, and this is not the branches of holly, but the holly bush, holly leaves. And I actually found that the holly leaves made quite a different glaze to the holly branches. So I separated the leaves and the branches, and I got this absolutely beautiful glaze. And it's basically, again, it's like a kind of translucent glaze, but where it's thick on the pot, it's actually gone light pink. So there's this kind of rare earth oxide that you can use. I read actually in like Linda Bloomfield has this really cool book on like the different colours that different oxides make, and it's just such an informative book, and it's got, basically it goes through all the different colours, all the different metal oxides make. And there's this oxide called erbium oxide, and the holly leaves is actually a bit reminiscent of an erbium oxide glaze. It's a very, very light pink, kind of pink. Yeah, it's such a beautiful glaze. And again, it's shiny and light pink. So if you're looking for like a really light pink glaze, holly leaves, is potential for you to make a glaze out of, rather than using erbium oxide. Absolutely lovely. Okay, and then the final glaze I want to show you is made with rhubarb leaves. And so rhubarb leaves I collected, again, I've got some rhubarb on my allotment, and I collected these in the autumn when the rhubarb leaves had actually like died down, and then I dried them a bit longer, and then because yeah, rhubarb leaves can be quite wet, so it's a great idea to let them kind of go, like die back in the autumn. And then I collected them all, dried them over the winter, and then I burned them in the spring. And rhubarb leaves, it's like, I have to say, I think this is probably one of the most colourful glazes that I managed to make with all my plant ash glazing experiments. Apart from the cherry laurel leaves, which are obviously like purple, but it's kind of this incredible blue, kind of blue, iridescent blue colour with, it's got blues, it's got whites, it's got browns in it, it's got parts of it are like transparent. It's just incredible. And I think the rhubarb ash just makes such a beautiful glaze. It's incredible. So if you're looking for a really interesting glaze to try on your pots, rhubarb ash is like a great top tip. So you can make a glaze from any plant, and so many plants make beautiful glazes, and there's a whole world out there for you to experiment in terms of like using different plants, using ashes of different plants, and just like the only thing I'd say at the end is just be super careful not to breathe in the smoke when you're making like plant ash glazes. Some of the smoke from plants is actually toxic. Just obviously be super careful when you're actually burning plants. Obviously with the fire and stuff. I actually burn mine in like a little fire pit that I got from the hardware store, and that helps to really contain it. It's a good idea not to burn it on a day which is like very windy, because your fine ash will blow away. So just, you want a still day. So I hope you enjoyed this episode on plant ash glazing. And like some, incredibly beautiful glazes that are available to you if you're doing plant ash glazing. There's so many out there, and it's really exciting kind of world of glaze making. So thank you so much for joining me on this episode, and I can't wait to see you on the next one. So if you liked that and you're interested in learning more about pottery, eco-conscious pottery, tools and techniques for potters, there's so much for you on the Oxford Clay website. There's blogs, ebooks, e-courses, video courses, and I can't wait to see you there. So the website is www.oxfordclay.co.uk.